In September 2004, Wairarapa District Health Board got the green light from Minister of Health Annette King to build a brand new $30 million hospital. The new hospital was to be built on the hockey field in front of the existing Masterton Hospital, on land owned by the Wairarapa District Health Board. This was a celebrated result of years of planning and lobbying. It came about for two main reasons. The business case presented to Parliament was able to prove that Wairarapa needed to retain hospital services in the region, and also that the most effective way to do this was to build a completely new hospital. The new site was blessed in November 2004, before ground was broken to construct the new helipad. This video traces the emergence of the new Wairarapa Hospital over the 14 months of construction and gives highlights of the official opening in May 2006. Between September and November 2004, local firm Rigjoki won the contract against national players as lead contractors for construction. The board was delighted to appoint them, recognising the real contribution this would make to the local economy and the value of local pride in all aspects of construction. There were huge advantages to being able to take a greenfield approach to restructuring our health services, especially in being able to keep a fully functioning Masterton Hospital operating during construction. The new hospital was designed by architectural firm Maunsell's to cater for a population of nearly 40,000. It's the only public hospital in the region. The design had to include the potential for significant population changes over the next 25 years, so spaces had to be flexible in terms of designated use, and there had to be room to expand without building up should the need arise. Groundworks for the new hospital began on the 3rd of January 2005. Despite its flat appearance, the ground sloped more than 1.5 metres from one side to the other, and a sizable mountain of earth soon arose as the site was levelled. Much of the topsoil was retained for future landscaping. Rigjoki used many local subcontractors in the construction of the hospital. Oldfields did the excavation and site levelling and provided more than 1,900 cubic metres of concrete for the building footprint. Other contractors included Laser Electrical, Watermart, Progressive Engineering, Justice Building Services, Reddish Decorating, Martin Roofing, Commercial Flooring, Prestige Ceilings, Carters and Mitre 10. The design of Wairarapa Hospital is a unique response to local needs. Key drivers included the building being fully functional after a major seismic event, the need to co-locate services for maximum efficiency, and the use of natural light and ventilation wherever possible. These requirements presented quite a challenge to the health planners and architects. The resulting design captured the essence of the needs of the Wairarapa community using innovative design, materials and processes. The seismic requirements meant that all co-locations of services had to be solved on one level only. There are no lifts or stairs in Wairarapa Hospital. Before the concrete slab could be poured, all underfloor services had to be laid. The hospital footprint is around 8,800 square metres, the size of 45 average houses. The staged work program meant that the contractors could be working on many fronts at any one time. While one team was working on site preparations, the next team was laying services on an area already prepared. Another team would be pouring a slab, and yet another could begin framing on a cured slab. The concrete slab was poured progressively over 4 months, from late January to mid-May. The house at number 6 Blair Street was moved to the front of the building site to serve as the site office for the duration of the project. Rigshoki General Manager Chris Hurrell and his team virtually lived there for the next 14 months. Wairarapa Hospital is a very significant building for the area. As a centre of rest and healing, it has a particular spiritual importance for the whole region. A ceremony was arranged by local iwi to bring together 4 Maui stones from the 4 corners of our region and bury them deep at the heart of the hospital to provide ongoing strength and connection with the land. This ceremony is rarely performed and only for buildings of great significance to the well-being of a community. The new hospital was scheduled for completion just 14 months from commencement. The rapid construction timeframe meant agencies all had to work together very efficiently to achieve deadlines. This timeline was essential because Masterton Hospital was running at a significant financial deficit, which could not be reversed without significant cuts to services. The status quo was not an option. It would have cost around $20 million over 20 years to bring the existing buildings up to standard, and even then, none of the inefficient design problems would have been solved. The old Masterton Hospital buildings were inefficient in terms of heating, lighting and layout. The new design reduced corridor space by around 70% and overall space by 30%, while still retaining the same number of beds. The first framing went up on the maternity unit in February 2005. In total, more than 100 kilometres of timber was used in the framing of Wairarapa Hospital, not including the roof trusses. Laid end to end, that amount of timber would run from Wairarapa Hospital to the front door of Wellington Hospital. Timber framing was an important part of the design because of its ability to flex during a seismic event. As the framing was going up in maternity, other teams were again at work on other parts of the site, marking out and excavating for pipework. The economic impact of this large contract was not just felt in the Wairarapa. Because of the sheer volume of material required, no one firm could supply everything in the short time frame in which it was needed. The frames were prefabricated in Masterton, Wellington and the Hawke's Bay. The roof trusses were made in Auckland, Hawke's Bay and Tauranga by the Carters Group. Careful programming of the construction meant that groups of workers could be working on site preparation, foundations, framing or roofing at any one time. Because of the size of the site, it was possible to make maximum use of all the resources at any one time. At the peak of construction, there were up to 140 staff on site, a real logistical challenge, but one in which everyone involved willingly put their shoulders to the wheel. Long hours were worked by many, and the extra mile was more like the extra marathon, but with an outstanding result. Once the framing was in place, installation of the roof trusses began. It's estimated that more than 160,000 nails were used in the construction of the roof trusses alone. By April, framing had commenced in the perioperative area at the rear of the hospital. This area contains 3 theatres, including an oversized theatre for orthopaedic procedures. There's also a sterile services suite, a post-anaesthetic care unit, and a 10-bed, 6-chair day procedure unit. Immediately over the main corridor from the theatre entrance is the Selina Sutherland Private Hospital. Selina Sutherland was established in 1996 and has a symbiotic relationship with the public hospital. Neither could easily survive without the other. Having a private hospital facility greatly enhances the ability to attract and retain specialists in the Wairarapa. Our relatively small population means some degree of integration is essential. Selina Sutherland Hospital leases their accommodation and the use of Wairarapa Hospital theatre and support facilities from the DHB. Selina Sutherland Hospital provides 6 beds and 3 clinic rooms with a range of resident and visiting specialties. By March, some of the external design features were becoming apparent, with the sloping columns in place on the front of the maternity unit. This design feature would be reproduced on all north-facing frontages, particularly the 100-metre front face of the hospital. The building's central feature is a glass corridor, nicknamed the Main Street, that gives public access to all inpatient areas and has views out onto 4 internal landscaped courtyards. Keeping our staff and community involved and informed was an important part of the project. In April, the Health Board invited the district councils to visit the building site. Their visit was one of many, and contractors went out of their way to accommodate the high level of interest in the project. By May, external cladding was in place on the maternity wing, enabling installation of insulation and some internal services. The weather was extraordinarily kind during the summer, autumn and early winter of 2005, and by the time the rains came in June and July, sufficient areas were roofed to allow work to continue without pause. Many staff visited the site during construction. Staff involvement was achieved through the formation of 11 user groups representing the workforce streams for the new hospital. These groups reported to a project coordination group, who in turn reported to a project control group. In total, there were more than 700 meetings over the course of the project to ensure staff had input into the design, functionality and look of their areas. Community input was obtained through a series of more than 50 meetings with community groups, reaching more than 4,000 people directly. This was a deliberate strategy to engage and inform our community, achieved through advertising the availability of senior DHB staff as speakers at existing community and service group meetings. Historically, Wairarapa has a long and proud history of community interest and ownership of their hospital. The offer of speakers was rapidly and eagerly taken up and continued for more than 6 months. By July, work was starting on installation of the major internal services, including wiring and air conditioning. Contractors Laser Electrical installed over 150 kilometres of cable in the new hospital, reaching 2,065 power outlets and 1,880 light fittings. From Te Ori Road, construction of the 100-metre frontage of Wairarapa Hospital was watched with interest by passing motorists and school children, and an evening walk around the perimeter of the building site became a regular feature for many Masterton residents. What they couldn't see was the clever co-location of services, from the ambulance entry and the resuscitation cubicles on the far left, adjacent to the emergency department, next to the imaging department, right next to the main entrance in the centre. On the right of the main entrance was medical records, right next to the outpatients department, next to pharmacy, next to laboratory on the far right. This design meant the waiting areas faced the internal courtyards, and all services that are the first point of contact for the public are located within metres of each other. Huge sheets of diamond deck colour steel long run iron were used for roofing, with lengths up to 26 metres. They were lifted by a supersized crane. Every time this crane was used, civil aviation had to be notified, given the close proximity to the helipad, which was still in frequent use to serve the old Masterton Hospital. All during construction, Masterton Hospital continued to provide a full range of services with minimal disruption. The new helipad was used regularly as it had been constructed with 2 access paths, one to Masterton Hospital and one facing the new Wairarapa Hospital. Retrieval crews come from Wellington with the Lifelight helicopters, and patients needing air transfer are stabilised before their journey. Helicopters are used on average 6 times a month to transfer patients needing a more intensive level of care or highly specialised regional services. In July, Prime Minister Helen Clark visited the building site to inspect progress and discuss the issues of providing health services to our region. This provided another opportunity to showcase not just the new building, but the new processes that were being worked through to future-proof health services in the region over the next 20 years. These changes involved considerable benchmarking of our services against other areas of New Zealand, which helped shape the workforce streams for Wairarapa Hospital. They included the co-location of emergency services with the high dependency services in the new acute services unit, and the establishment of an acute assessment unit as part of this. The changes also included the amalgamation of the medical and surgical wards to provide maximum staff and bed flexibility to cope with seasonal changes in demand. Another major feature was the grouping of all perioperative services, enabling a seamless journey for people coming in for day procedures. These service groupings allowed greater efficiency in support services, as well as nursing services. For example, at nights all inpatient areas are open to each other, but closed off from the rest of the hospital, allowing greater staff interaction and support. No more small geographically isolated units spread over a wide area. Once spaces were closed in, user groups continued to have input into the size and location of fixtures and fittings. They were the ones who knew best where equipment would be located and how many power points would be required. Around this time, a bed run was arranged, where the new electric beds were physically pushed through every door they would be required to be moved through. This worthwhile exercise resulted in 11 door spaces being altered to improve access or functionality. The walkthroughs also enabled staff to get a better feel for the actual size of the areas they would be working in, something very hard to achieve from a paper floor plan. All issues raised were recorded on a facilities log. Follow-up was reported back through the weekly project coordination meetings and through the regular Insight newsletter. The logging system continued right through until 6 months after migration to the new hospital. This prevented much duplication of reporting and effort. As well as the underslab drainage services, a new sewer line and stormwater drain had to be dug following resource consents from the District Council. By October, a walk down the main street showed the enormous pace of change as buildings took on more of their final shape. Some areas were already nearing final completion, with plastering, painting and installation of fittings well underway. In November, the refrigerated storage unit for Te Whare, the hospital's morgue area, was ready for installation. The crane was put to use again, and thanks to the builder's meticulous measurements, the transfer was effected with no hitches. The curbing for the new roads and car parks was done in January and February of 2006, but several weeks of intermittent rain delayed the final sealing. Meanwhile, work continued both inside and out in the race against the clock to have the hospital certified as fit for use before the scheduled move in March. All interior walls are covered in a relatively new product called Triboard, which is manufactured in New Zealand. This was chosen mainly for its flexibility and durability, though an important factor was also the ease of cleaning. Hospital walls have a very rough life, and the way this product withstood strong knocks without damage was a real bonus. In most areas, walls are vinyl covered to a height of 1.2 metres and then painted above. As the maternity unit was the first to be started, it was the first to be completed. There are 3 delivery rooms, 2 of which have access to a circular labour pool. The unit has 6 single rooms with en-suites, and 2 of those rooms have facilities for twin babies. Another design feature allows 2 further 2-bedroom rooms to be designated as swing beds, which are accessible to and can be used by the children's ward, the maternity unit, or the medical surgical unit, depending on demand. As well as the new facility, Wairarapa DHB spent about $3.7 million over 3 years on capital equipment. Some of the more expensive items included the new theatre lights, pendants and tables, new autoclave equipment, beds, laboratory equipment, monitoring equipment, IV pumps, and more hidden items like air conditioning, fully digital imaging capability, and the Windscribe dictation system. Most of the equipment in the new imaging department is new, including the CT machine. This machine and the new sonography equipment was leased by the Wairarapa Community Health Trust, which channels donations from the community into support for our health services. This same trust also enables us to regularly update and replace our DHB-owned ambulance fleet, giving us one of the most up-to-date fleets in the country. The imaging department has the CT suite, a fluoroscopy room, a plain film room and 2 ultrasound rooms. There's also an integral lecture room, recognising our commitment as a teaching hospital. The system is fully digital. This enables clinicians to access images around the hospital and to share images with colleagues anywhere in the world for analysis or diagnosis. One of the final touches was the installation of floor coverings. Considerable research was done to decide on the best options, and eventually a carpet product was chosen for most inpatient areas, along with a specialised cleaning system. Tests had shown that this was both quieter and more hygienic than traditional linoleum products. By December, areas first started were nearing completion, with installation of floor coverings, paintwork and fittings. A feature of the Wairarapa hospital design was the efficient co-location of services. The new autoclaves for the sterile services were installed in a unit adjacent to the operating theatres within the perioperative suite. Now take a look around our new hospital before any patients or staff moved in. With a massive effort by all concerned, the building was ready for staff and public open days on the 25th and 26th of March 2006, a mere 14 months after the project was commenced. That the project was both on time and on budget was a huge commendation to all involved. Over the open weekend, more than 5,000 people came through Wairarapa Hospital on escorted tours of up to 20 people along a designated route. Staff from across the organisation, including cleaners, doctors, nurses, support staff and board members, led the tours. Volunteers from the Heart Foundation managed traffic flow and parking and minded open areas with movable equipment. Immediately the hospital was vacated on the Sunday afternoon, the tireless team of cleaners, who had already cleaned most areas at least twice, moved in to do the final surgical clean, before the acute services began their migration the next day. Over the following week, in a series of carefully staged moves, the whole of Masterton Hospital migrated to their brand new, purpose-built, fully functional Wairarapa Hospital. What an achievement! It's very rare that a whole hospital shifts in one move. Usually it's phased around rebuilding. What was achieved over 6 days was remarkable, and with no adverse patient events. The power failure that struck the north of Masterton on the Thursday evening merely served to test the hospital's emergency backup systems, and they passed with flying colours. They had already been tested once 3 weeks prior, when one of the 2 power transformers serving the new hospital had a severe fault and burst into flames. While the big shift was the end point of months of detailed planning, it was also just the beginning of a new era in healthcare. All the systems that had been planned were now fully tested in the new environment, and the process of bedding down the changes began. The 4 internal courtyards are a beautiful and therapeutic feature of Wairarapa Hospital. Funding for the hospital did not extend to landscaping of these courtyards, and so over the course of the project, $250,000 was raised in the community for this. The design and execution of the plans was done on a voluntary basis by landscaper Lynn Eglinton, who, with a team of volunteers, spent many hours digging and planting. The courtyard adjacent to the cafe and the outpatients area contains a children's play area, and all have water features. The courtyard opposite the chapel has several memorial trees relocated from the old Masterton Hospital grounds. It's worth noting that only one old diseased tree was disposed of in the construction of the hospital. All others were either relocated or built around. A further therapeutic courtyard is being developed between the rehabilitation unit and the allied health wing. It will contain a variety of different levels and surfaces and enable people recovering from surgery or strokes to practice their mobility skills in a safe and controlled environment. These courtyards are an awesome reminder of the intense community involvement in and sense of ownership for the new Wairarapa Hospital. Five weeks after moving in, Prime Minister Helen Clark arrived to officially open the new hospital in front of an audience of around 500 people, some of whom had travelled from around New Zealand to see what we had achieved.
Tēnā koutou katoa. thank you for a wonderful welcome. That was just great. Right Honourable Helen Clark, Prime Minister. Honourable Pete Hodgson, Minister of Health, and Honourable Wairarapa Haramia, Minister of Maori Affairs. We're really proud and privileged to have such a good representation here today, and we appreciate that very, very much. Also, I'd like to welcome John Hayes, MP for Wairarapa, and Georgina Bayer, somewhere in the audience, MP, Georgina, and invited guests, the worship mayors of Carterton, Masterton, and South Wairarapa. I must not forget the DHB management, the DHB staff are sprinkled through the audience, and of course my own board members, the DHB board members. Good morning and welcome to the official opening of Wairarapa Hospital. We have a number of apologies, but I'm only going to mention one, and that's the Honourable Annette King, Minister of Police now, of course, but was the Minister of Health, and we had many, many meetings over the years, and I'll come back to that, but the immediate past Minister of Health sent her apologies, because when she turned the first sod, she said, don't forget to invite me back, so we've done the invitation. But thank you to everyone for being with us today to celebrate what indeed is a very significant milestone for health services in Wairarapa. It is 127 years since the first Masterton Hospital was opened, and it has been a long and interesting journey, as somebody said, from there to here. As in the nature of the Wairarapa, that journey has been characterised by periods of active involvement of the Wairarapa community in support of and in protection of regional hospital services. Indeed, that journey began back in 1864 when a strong-willed young Scottish woman named Selina Sutherland came from Sutherlandshire, Scotland, to live in the Wairarapa. Selina quickly became involved throughout the district in a real interest, nursing, and became widely known as New Zealand's Florence Nightingale, riding on horseback throughout the district. To help explain the role Selina played and where we are today, let us take you back 130 years. I ask that you hold your applause till everybody's finished the review. It is my, not to frighten the horse, it's fine. It knows you all. It's my very great pleasure to introduce you to Miss Selina Sutherland.
Nurses, all rise please. May I remind you, nurses, that you must always stand when a doctor enters the room.
Dr. William Hosking was medical superintendent for 20 years, then fought in the Boer War. He remained on the staff until 1916 and died of radium poisoning a year later. Welcome, Dr. Hosking.
It was my recommendation we appoint our first probationary nurse in 1897. And for the past 3 years, we have been a training hospital for nurses. It's wonderful that we can now train our own rather than rely on untrained staff or immigration from the home country.
By 1918, 2 further wards had been built at the new Masterton Hospital, and the First World War was at an end. Hard on its heels came the influenza epidemic. Dr. Helen Cowie was the only doctor in Masterton not stricken with the flu. The hospital could not accommodate all the influenza cases, and the Masterton Club was declared an emergency hospital for several weeks at the end of 1918.
Mary, have you seen Rachel? I've got to find her. I've got to ask for a half day. I have been working 24 days straight on the emergency hospital. I tell you, I am so tired.
Dr. Norman Pryor was an honorary member of the medical staff. Dr. Pryor arrived in 1909 after completing his training in Edinburgh.
Thank you for asking me to talk today to honour our matron, Miss Barnett, and reminisce about the hospital she and I have known. How things have changed over the years. When I first started work here in 1909, the population was about 4,000 people. We have, however, over the years been very lucky with the stability of the staff, both medical and nursing.
Dr. Norman Pryor retired from the hospital after the Second World War. He served the Wairarapa community for more than 50 years. His son Owen went on to do the same, becoming medical superintendent himself for several years. His grandson Simon has carried on the family tradition and is still in general practice in Masterton. But now on to the 60s, when a new broom arrived in the form of Dr. Dick Skelly.
ago, in '57, I came here as medical superintendent. The problems faced by a rural hospital serving a relatively small population were immediately apparent to me. Recent years, we have seen rapid technical advances and growth in specialisation within medicine. Our facilities and practices at that time were not adequate to meet current or future requirements.
Although the extra wing at Masterton Hospital was never built, many of Dick Scally's and Owen Pryor's ideas stood the test of time. Dick Scally died just 2 years ago after a lifetime of service to the community. Masterton Hospital celebrated its centenary in 1979, and 10 years later Masterton and Greytown Hospital services were under severe threat with a change in thinking towards centralisation of health services. The maternity homes in Featherston, Martinborough, Whangaroa, Pahiatua and Ekatahuna had all closed over the years. Masterton and Greytown Hospital had come under the jurisdiction of the Wellington Area Health Board, and the suggestion was made that the hospitals could be rationalised. This provoked an unprecedented response and mobilised the whole community to save our hospitals.
Here we are on the steps of Parliament, all 2,000 of us. 6 extra carriages on the train, and even that wasn't enough. What an amazing day. We've got 22,332 signatures on this petition to save our hospitals. So now these politicians will have to sit up and take notice. This is our message to Parliament. Keep your hands off our hospital. You can keep your fancy promises. Just leave our hospitals right where they are, in the hearts of our community.
The protests made their mark, both politically and in a dividing part of the Wairarapa folk history. The logic of rationalisation was, however, irrefutable, and the smaller Greytown Hospital closed in 1997, with its service being absorbed into the Masterton Hospital. The pace of change in healthcare accelerated, and for the next 15 years Masterton grappled with the same problems faced in previous generations. How to provide quality, up-to-date service in old, outdated facilities that were expensive to run and were not suited to modern practice. Proposal after proposal was developed, wards and theatres were refurbished, the asbestos-ridden maternity unit was vacated, but it seemed we were in a downward spiral with no option but to cut services to balance the books. Through the 90s, management and board evaluated a number of hospital development plans to address the service delivery cost and sustainability problems. They were caused by the old spread-out facilities and inefficient processes. That work continued until the 30th of September 2004.
Hey Harry, can't you stay away from the place?
Hi, Alana.
You retired years ago.
I've worked here as a house manager for 33 years. And I can't stay away from the place. I've been over helping more youths with cardiac rehab. I looked at patients once and I found it such a great program, I'd like to tell the others.
Well, I tell you what, have you heard this good news? We actually got the 30 million we asked for a brand new hospital.
I can't believe it. We've been trying for years to get $2 out of them and we haven't got it done.
Last I heard, we were asking for 6 to 8 million to do our outpatients and emergency department. Tell you what, those Treasury blokes must have had a fit when we asked for 30 million.
You're kidding.
Thank you to everyone. A great, mostly staff, one from outside, oh, plus the piper. He was a ring-in also. Thanks very much. Just great. Now it's my pleasure to invite the Prime Minister to speak to us, to introduce the Prime Minister with a bit of a particular. I can get up the step.
Ena iwi whakatani, Ngāti Kahuru, ena reira, ena tira maha tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou koutou. Thank you for the wonderful welcome and also for the young people singing. It was mentioned to me in the translation that they were singing very old Wairarapa songs, and they're certainly not ones I'm familiar with, so it's fascinating to be introduced to that aspect of taonga in the Wairarapa. Colleagues, the Honourable Pete Hodgson, Honourable Palikura Horomia, Georgina Fire, John Hayes, Mayor Bob, Doug Matheson, Chair, board members, staff and ladies and gentlemen. And it is of course a red letter day here at the opening of what we're not allowed to call the new Wairarapa Hospital. We must call the new model health service in Wairarapa. Congratulations to you, Doug, and to your board on what you've achieved, which is the successful completion of a huge project on time and on budget. And I wish you and the board and the staff and the people of the Wairarapa all the best for the new hospital, and it's a great honour for me to come today and declare it officially open. And I think I have a little plaque behind me, with a piece of Velcros, which I should now tackle. And I will read, Wairarapa Hospital was officially opened by the Right Honourable Helen Clark, Prime Minister, 4th of May 2006. This hospital is testament to the commitment of the Wairarapa community to ensure local access to appropriate health services. Please give the Wairarapa a clap.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you for the comments. We appreciate them very much. And thank you for coming today and opening the hospital and unveiling the plaque. That concludes the formal proceedings. The Prime Minister and the Ministers are going to leave for a brief visit to the new hospital. And if you could just stay seated for a moment, there's a short video that will be introduced for you, and you're invited to stay for refreshments here. Then you may take a walk through the hospital. The route will be clearly marked, and I think sure someone's going to brief you on that. It's not possible to go everywhere because it is a fully functioning hospital, as you realise by the traffic outside. But thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate your support to get us to this point, and I hope we don't see you in the hospital. I'll let Ian and David lead the way. That's right, it's going to take that, yes? The help.
How do you do? Nice to meet you. Welcome into the perioperative services.
Hello.
We've got day procedure unit here. We have 9 beds entailed here.
People operating today, they come up from
Operational.
Thank you for your comment too.